Number 9. Tianis Jones. A young pregnant woman was arrested for throwing a violent tantrum at a McDonald's in Lakeland, Florida on May the 19th of 2022. According to the Polk County Sheriff's Office, the incident began at around 5:30 p.m. when 22-year-old Tianis Jones arrived at the restaurant to pick up an order she'd placed online earlier. She proceeded through the drive-thru line but was reportedly told that there had been an error with her food. The employees asked her to wait at the third drive-thru window while the mistake was being corrected, but Jones instead parked her vehicle and stormed inside to confront the workers face to face. Roughly a minute into the ensuing interaction, Jones allegedly became violent, striking a small plastic sign and several bottles in the direction of the employees. Shortly thereafter, one of the young woman's relatives entered the restaurant and attempted to calm her down. Her outburst continued for about 10 minutes and resulted in approximately $100 worth of damages. Jones eventually dialed 911 to report that the McDonald's had tried to cheat her out of her money, and officers were subsequently dispatched to the scene. Before their arrival, however, Jones's meltdown culminated with the young woman lifting up her shirt to expose her midriff to the workers before finally agreeing to leave. The following day, she was taken into police custody on charges of burglary with assault, criminal mischief, disorderly conduct, and misuse of 911. Number 8. The Woolworths Meltdown. A viral video posted to Reddit in April of 2021 showed an amputee in a wheelchair getting into an altercation with employees at a Woolworths store in the Australian harbour city of Newcastle. New South Wales police made their way to the scene of the incident, which occurred on the evening of October the 21st of 2020. After receiving reports of a man exhibiting aggressive behaviour, the wheelchair-bound individual initially crashed through a security partition at the Market Town shopping centre. His public meltdown continued as he then got into a heated argument with a female employee, allegedly tossing items and spitting at her before moving to the entrance of the supermarket. He started hurling shopping baskets at bread displays in the store, prompting a security guard to intervene. The man charged at the guard, causing his wheelchair to fall over onto its side, at which point he kept aggressively pursuing him by pulling his body across the floor. A female bystander eventually helped the man back into his wheelchair and he left the scene. It was reported that the belligerent man was ultimately not charged in connection to his rage-fueled outburst. Number 7. Martin Alvarez. Florida police made their way to a Waffle House on Del Prado Boulevard South in Cape Coral on January the 19th of 2022 after receiving reports of a disturbance. When they arrived at the scene, officers came upon local man Martin Alvarez as he was in the midst of an outburst about the way in which the restaurant's employees were cooking his bacon. The shirtless man wanted to make sure that the workers were preparing the meal to his liking. His intervention, however, allegedly involved him shouting a barrage of profanities at them that included racial slurs. He subsequently resisted the police's attempts to detain him, prompting officers to threaten him with tasers. Alvarez was ultimately taken into custody on charges of disorderly intoxication, resisting an officer, and simple assault with intent to do violence. Number 6. Adam Whittingham. On February the 9th of 2019, during a Ryanair flight from Morocco to Manchester, England, a passenger got into a row with other travelers as well as the cabin crew and was ultimately arrested for causing a mid-air disturbance. According to subsequent reports, a fellow passenger had initially approached 32-year-old Adam Whittingham to talk to him about the Manchester United jersey he was wearing. Whittingham allegedly became abusive towards the other man, prompting him to move his seat 3 rows back. Shortly after takeoff, Whittingham reportedly began speaking very loudly to fellow passengers as he drank whiskey straight from a bottle. He asked the cabin supervisor for a glass, but the staffer indicated that he was busy. Whittingham then began sifting through the supervisor's trolley himself and allegedly pushed a crew member who'd asked him to stop. The man's hostile behavior continued after he returned to his seat, prompting the supervisor to ask him to put his whiskey bottle away. Whittingham refused, and he subsequently began physically attacking some of the travelers sitting near him. One witness claimed to have seen him elbow someone in the face, while a number of passengers complained that he was violently banging his head against the back of the seat in front of him, while shouting a string of profanities. When asked to calm down, Whittingham allegedly mocked a female passenger's accent. As the plane finally neared its destination, the belligerent flyer was seen punching the man next to him, knocking out one of his teeth in the process. Upon the aircraft's arrival in Manchester, Whittingham was met by police officers, who pinned him to the ground and handcuffed him, reportedly as witnesses cheered them on. The man who reportedly bit one of the arrested officers was ultimately jailed for a period of 20 months following a trial at Minshull Street Crown Court. Number 5. Henry Arce Caballero. Florida man Henry Arce Caballero got into an argument with workers at a Checkers restaurant in Largo on November the 4th of 2020. Police officers were called to the scene at about 11:30 p.m. after employees had reported that an angry customer was shouting and beating on the glass window of the drive-thru. The source of Arce Caballero's ire was that his order had been botched because there was no lettuce on his sandwich. The man reportedly refused to identify himself when approached by the officers, despite their repeated requests that he produce his driver's license. Law enforcement removed the suspect from his vehicle, and although he'd allegedly behaved uncooperatively at first, they ultimately managed to take him into custody. Court records indicated that Arce Caballero was charged with resisting an officer without violence and disorderly conduct in connection to his public meltdown. Number 4. The attack on the WUSA 9 crew. Staffers from the WUSA 9 news station in Washington, D.C. went to a house in the city's southeast region to cover a hostage situation that unfolded in the early hours of October the 30th of 2013. Reporter Bruce Johnson and his photographer Danielle Gill were speaking with nearby residents when a woman watching from the second-floor window of the house they were covering began yelling at them to leave. They refused to comply with her demands, at which point the unidentified woman became incensed and went down to the street to confront them. The news crew contended that they were under no obligation to leave as they were standing on a public street, but the woman continued to shout at them before spraying mace in their general direction. She then struck both Johnson and Gill with one punch and knocked over the latter's video camera. To avoid further violence, the news crew left the area. While speaking about the incident later on, Johnson indicated that he wasn't sure whether the woman had been involved in the reported hostage situation, but added it was clear she'd been under a lot of stress. Number 3. Anna Storelli. As reported by multiple news outlets in April of 2017, California woman Anna Storelli was waiting in line at a restaurant in Santa Monica when she became enraged by a couple sitting nearby. Storelli's meltdown was captured in a 7-minute video, during which she was shown yelling at a man and woman for allegedly kissing in public. She proceeded to launch an expletive-laden tirade at the couple, claiming that their public display of affection was making her and others feel uncomfortable. The man involved in the interaction later clarified that he'd only kissed his girlfriend on the forehead in the moments leading up to Storelli's outburst. The latter reportedly accused the young woman of being an escort before demanding a refund from the restaurant and threatening to have the cashier fired for their perceived mistreatment of her. Upon the video's release on social media, Storelli was widely ridiculed for her behavior, with many considering her reaction to the couple's kiss to have been an extreme overreaction. Number 2. Blake A. Fleissig and Anna C. Kuzman. Law enforcement in Minneapolis, Minnesota received reports of a mid-air meltdown by a pair of unruly airplane passengers on December the 28th of 2016. It was reported that roughly an hour after Delta Flight 2565 had taken off from the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, Blake A. Fleissig and his girlfriend, Anna C. Kuzman, had gotten into an altercation with others on board the aircraft. It started after the latter had allegedly left her seat to use the bathroom. She had done so within moments of the plane being airborne, which was prohibited by air travel regulations. A flight attendant requested that she return to her seat, at which point she became aggressive and created a disruption in the cabin. Kuzman and Fleissig reportedly got so belligerent that the pilots were forced to divert the Los Angeles-bound flight back to the airport from which it had departed. The aircraft was met by Minneapolis police officers who took the two suspects into custody. As Fleissig was being escorted off the plane, he allegedly punched another passenger, prompting the officers to tackle him to the ground. Both Fleissig and Kuzman were initially charged with disorderly conduct, although it was reported that the former, who was the vice president of Citibank, had the charges against him dropped by prosecutors. Number 1. Jessica Mims. Shortly after 10 p.m. on January the 3rd of 2017, Illinois woman Jessica Mims entered a Subway restaurant in Evergreen Park and requested to use the restroom. The 23-year-old subsequently left without ordering any food. However, a short time later, she reportedly returned and asked to go back into the bathroom to look for money she'd purportedly left behind on accident. A store employee accompanied Mims to search for the misplaced cash, which they couldn't find. The young woman's behavior then became erratic and she accused the unnamed worker of having taken the money she'd lost. The situation ultimately devolved into a physical altercation between the two. Mims's public meltdown began with her pepper spraying the worker and progressed to her exiting the restaurant and smashing one of its windows. The young woman was consequently arrested and charged with unlawful use of a weapon and criminal damage to property. It subsequently emerged that Mims, who suffered from schizophrenia and depression, hadn't been taking her prescribed medication at the time of her outburst. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have a video of you melting down go viral or have to walk around in your underwear for an entire day? Let us know in the comments section below.